Hi, and welcome back to Type 1 Diabetes Explained. Today, we are going to be talking about what it's like to be a first responder with Type 1 diabetes and how you can manage your blood sugars while safely doing your job. Often, one of the first questions that people ask when they are diagnosed with Type 1 is whether they will still be able to get the job that they want. Thankfully, you can still do almost every job that you might want to, and there are even some laws and regulations in place to help ensure that you are able to treat and manage your Type 1 while at work. However, there are a few jobs that have more restrictions, including being a first responder when your Type 1 diabetes may affect the safety of others. In the past, having either Type 1 or Type 2 diabetes was frequently an immediate disqualification from any type of firefighting, police, or emergency medical occupation. But thanks to large advances in diabetes management, people with diabetes are now regularly getting jobs in all three fields. In this video, we'll discuss some of the risks of being a first responder with Type 1, the laws and regulations currently in place, the process to get one of these jobs, and how to manage your blood sugars while working. The field of emergency services is highly unpredictable. As a first responder, you will likely experience widely varying levels of physical activity throughout your shift. You might spend hours riding in a vehicle, followed by short bursts or sometimes much longer periods of intense physical activity. This poses an added risk for someone with Type 1 diabetes, as such exercise can rapidly lower your blood sugar to dangerous levels. Additionally, first responders often work irregular shifts, miss regularly scheduled meals, and lack a traditional sleep schedule. Combined with stress, all of these factors create further challenges for a first responder with Type 1 diabetes, making it much harder to control blood sugar levels while on duty. In other jobs, these risks are isolated to the health of the person with Type 1. However, unlike other jobs, first responders are often responsible for the health and safety of other people around them. First responders are often required to engage in physical activity, make quick and accurate judgments, and perform well under stress, all of which could be impaired by blood sugars that are out of range. Therefore, it's important for these departments and regulating organizations to ensure that a person with Type 1 can fulfill their duties and maintain a safe working environment, just as well as someone who does not have Type 1 before allowing them to work as a first responder. Now that we understand some of the risks that need to be taken into consideration, we can begin looking at some of the regulations regarding having Type 1 while working in these professions. Before we take a closer look, there are two important things to know. Firstly, the laws and regulations around being a first responder with Type 1 are highly variable, and each county, state, jurisdiction, and department will likely have their own procedures and requirements. Since we can't delve into all of these in detail, in this video we'll focus more on the most common regulations seen across multiple departments. Additionally, a common theme that you will see between all of them is that a person with Type 1 is initially considered to be ineligible for employment unless they can prove that their diabetes is controlled to the point where it would not pose a risk to the duties of the position, and that these decisions are made on a case-by-case basis rather than as a federal or state regulation. We'll start by taking a closer look at emergency medical professions, such as EMTs or paramedics. Since emergency medicine is a field that normally has less risk of serious bodily injury to the employees, there are fewer federal regulations regarding employment when compared to policing or firefighting, and most of the policy decisions are left to the individual agencies. In the United States, regulations vary significantly by location. Some states and agencies do not require any additional documentation of your Type 1 so long as it does not clearly affect your duties, while others may require a doctor to complete a form outlining how well your diabetes is controlled. There are generally more requirements to meet if you wish to drive an ambulance, but they are still very different based on location. Some states require only a basic driver's license plus the appropriate training certification, while others will require you to receive a medical waiver from the Department of Transportation or Department of Motor Vehicles to prove that your diabetes is not an additional risk to you driving an ambulance. While the specific policies are very different depending on where you live, there's a general consensus that people with Type 1 can safely and effectively work as an emergency medical professional provided that their Type 1 is well managed. We'll now take a closer look at joining law enforcement with Type 1. In the United States, the American Diabetes Association worked with the American College of Occupational and Environmental Medicine to develop a national consensus guideline for the medical evaluation of law enforcement officers, which is the set of standards and policies that are used by many departments. Sticking with the common theme, ACOEM states that the educated and motivated law enforcement officer, LEO, with well-managed diabetes mellitus can be capable of safe and effective job performance, but an individualized assessment of the LEO's diabetes should be performed to determine whether the individual's condition permits safe and effective job performance. The assessment to determine whether someone is capable of effective job performance includes 3 main factors to help guide the final decision: the history of your diabetes treatment, the risk for impairing events, such as symptomatic and severe hypoglycemia, hypoglycemia unawareness, or symptomatic hyperglycemia and diabetic ketoacidosis, and the presence of diabetic complications. The guidelines themselves go into much more detail about insulin use, glucose testing frequency, and other health measures, and you can find the entire guideline document linked below. But all of the criteria have the same goal of ensuring that your diabetes is well managed. Just like with emergency medical professions, these regulations may vary by location, and certain departments may have different or additional requirements that need to be met. Finally, we'll look at firefighting. Similarly to police, most departments have an overall governing document that sets guidelines for health requirements, which is called the NFPA 1582, which stands for the National Fire Protection Association, and 1582 is the number of the document which outlines medical standards for firefighters. This document outlines type 1 diabetes as a disqualifying medical condition unless the following requirements are met. The person is maintained by a physician knowledgeable in current management of diabetes. The person has demonstrated over a period of at least 6 months the motivation and understanding required to closely monitor and control blood glucose levels through nutritional therapy and insulin administration. Has a normal retinal exam by a qualified ophthalmologist or optometrist that shows no or only very minimal diabetic retinopathy. Has normal renal function. Has no autonomic or peripheral neuropathy. Has normal cardiac function, and has a signed statement from an endocrinologist knowledgeable in the management of diabetes and the essential job tasks and hazards of firefighting that the candidate meets the following criteria: is successfully maintaining a healthy diabetes treatment regimen, has achieved stable control of blood glucose as evidenced by hemoglobin A1C consistently less than 8 when monitored at least twice yearly, does not have an increased risk of hypoglycemia due to alcohol use or other predisposing factors, has had no episodes of severe hypoglycemia, defined as requiring assistance of another, in the preceding 1 year with no more than 1 episode of severe hypoglycemia in the preceding 5 years, and is certified to have no other medical reasons that prohibit firefighting training and operations. Clearly, these requirements are much more detailed and strict than those for the previous 2 professions, and it's also important to remember that there will still be variation between departments. A large metropolitan department with 10,000 employees will likely have different requirements than a small volunteer fire department. For a slightly more clarified outline of these national criteria, visit our website linked below, which contains several documents discussing the medical standards, physical evaluations, and other tasks to complete regarding your diabetes treatment in order for you to be cleared to be a firefighter. Now that we've learned about the regulations and processes to become a first responder, we can take a look at how to safely manage your diabetes while on the job. The number 1 goal of diabetes management is to keep your blood sugar in range, and if you were able to successfully get a job as a first responder, that probably means you are already pretty good at this. As you begin working, it is important to take note of how your blood sugar responds to different activities and meals. This is where having a CGM is super useful. Being able to check your blood sugar with just a quick glance at your phone or smartwatch makes it much easier to stay in range, and many CGMs will also send you alerts if you are about to go too low or too high. Additionally, using an insulin pump may also be something that you want to consider if you're planning on becoming a first responder. Just like CGMs, they can drastically simplify your diabetes management by allowing you to quickly and easily dose with insulin without having to give yourself a physical injection. Keeping your supplies, including a testing method, a source of glucose, and a source of insulin, with you at all times is crucial in making sure that you are always prepared no matter what happens. The second big thing to take care of is education. As a person with diabetes, it is your responsibility to ensure that those around you are properly educated about what having a coworker with type 1 means. This is important not only so they can help you in the event that you need it, but also so that they are aware that you'll be treating your blood sugar during work and know how you'll be doing so. This could be something as simple like quickly letting someone know that you have type 1. After all, most first responders will be at least somewhat familiar with the condition, but it sometimes may be more involved and require a longer discussion. Education is particularly important with supervisors and chiefs who will be overseeing your work. Ensuring that you are managing their expectations and understanding of what you need to do to both successfully manage your Type 1 and fulfill the duties of your job is important to make sure that everyone is safe and on the same page. Aside from that, you can go about your job just as anyone else without Type 1 would. Many first responders say that they often forget that they have Type 1 while working, and that there aren't many significant changes that they noticed when working. Hopefully today's information about becoming a first responder with Type 1 has been useful. Since regulations can vary significantly depending on where you live, please check with your local agencies for the most accurate information regarding your specific situation. Special thanks to Constable Ian Barraclough and Firefighter Ben Blanco for their assistance in the research for this video. You can find their full interviews and much more information about being a first responder with Type 1 using the link in the description below. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a great day.